I'll make sure I send it out to everyone. Thank you to Daniel for joining us today. We're so excited to have you here and sharing your wisdom with us at the Field Network. So, Daniel comes to us with a lot of experience, 30 years of food sovereignty and social entrepreneur, Ashoka Fellow, MIT Fellow for Social Entrepreneurship, founder and CEO of DAISA Enterprises. And we're really excited to learn with and from you today. So I will pass it over to you.
Great. And Colleen, you want to start doing the slide? Thanks, too. Hi, everybody. Good to be here with you today. I'm Daniel Ross. I use he, him pronouns. And yeah, thanks for having me. I'm for close to, I think, over 17 years. I worked with Nueces Raices, an organization in Holyoke, Massachusetts, one of the early examples of um, immigrant farming or farmer training and incubator programs. What was it called, Jennifer? The Immigrant Farming Network back in the day. I think a predecessor of this network.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, we were heavily involved in that. So I feel a lot of connection to the work that you all do, your organizations. I know very well what it's like to try and sustain an immigrant farmer training program, food sovereignty, nonprofit organization through hard times. Um, and maybe we can go to the next slide too, Colleen. So yeah, people, please keep putting your names and where you're from and what you're hoping to get out of this session today too in the chat. That will help me make it as relevant as possible. Um, I'll also say that, I mean, this session will be interactive. We're going to have some little exercises, maybe even I think we can fit in a small group session. Um, I mean, having been in your positions, knowing how busy you all are, and myself as well, I've got a little touch of ADD. My normal approach to webinars is to be off, have the video off, be multitasking, do 1,800 emails while I'm on the webinar. But this will, I think, be most effective for all of us. The more people can be engaged, the more people can ask questions, think of it as a conversation, not just a webinar. So yeah, try and be as connected as possible, and we'll get the most out of it. Um, so um, with cutbacks and the chaos of the federal government, all the cuts and delays of the USDA programs that we've maybe not yet, Colleen. Um, uh, it's very hard to trust these USDA programs, even when they do get back in place. Um, we've had a complete kind of loss of the resources of the federal government for the type of programs and initiatives that we're trying to do. And that puts even more pressure on foundations and state governments. Those funding sources are even more competitive. So all organizations, community-based organizations around the country are looking even harder at how they can generate sustainable revenues creatively and independently. And from working with organizations around the country in my current company, DAISA Enterprises, everybody's thinking hard about how they can sustain their work. And so many community-based food sovereignty organizations, training organizations, are responding by trying to seek sustainable revenues, leveraging off of their assets that the organizations already have in food and agriculture, thinking about exploring new or expanding ventures that they had already. And when I say ventures, I mean like businesses, like enterprises, or products owned by the organization. People are thinking, okay, so why can't we do a CSA, a community supported agriculture operation from our incubator farm, or rent out our teaching kitchen, develop a new food hub, bottle and sell this product. We're going to make money somehow in a way that doesn't depend on the government or foundations because we have to. And just to be clear, I mean, in this workshop, we're going to be talking a lot about actual kind of businesses, enterprises, income generating ventures, not as much like new programs or grants or donations as a fundraising strategy. So that's really going to be if you're interested in something else entirely, or like grants or donations, That's not what this session is about. You might get some things that, I mean, this methodology that I'm going to be sharing does offer, a lot to learn that would help even in some of those other efforts, but that's not really what this is about. We're going to be talking about businesses. And I'm going to be sharing a methodology and lessons for enterprise planning and development. So, I mean, these kind of food enterprises that come out of a nonprofit organization can really accomplish mission outcomes as well as generate revenue. They can create jobs, they can build awareness, they can support the farmers that you're working with. Food-related enterprises by an organization like yours can make really elegant and powerful connections. But approximately 20% of food businesses fail in their first year, and around 60% fail within 5 years. All businesses are risky, have some risk entailed, and food businesses are especially tricky. I mean, they're characterized by high risk from climate and markets. They're often come with extremely low margins, and usually a lot of capital required, land, equipment, buildings. Nonprofits get grants and funders, and sometimes we ourselves will expect that because we got a grant to do something that we're going to have surefire success. But there's really no reason that nonprofits can always be more successful than private business startups facing the same challenges and risks. And sometimes nonprofits can have even more challenges to profitability as you add in your mission considerations and staff that didn't necessarily come from that business background. So private entrepreneurs can lose their life savings when trying to start up a business. And nonprofits can lose precious resources for that were allocated for the community. You could be constantly drawing from unrestricted funds to support your business operations. And I've seen nonprofits even go bankrupt if their food businesses go under. So I'm not trying to discourage anyone. In fact, I'm actually going to be encouraging pretty soon. But just want to make sure everybody's going into this with eyes wide open and that you have, a full toolbox for you to use. So again, this session is to share an approach that will help you with planning these kind of enterprises in a way that really improves your chance of success and minimizes how much risk you're putting your organization in. Okay, does that seem consistent with what everybody wanted? Any questions so far? Comments so far? Okay. Jennifer?
Sorry, are you going to be talking a little bit about the entrepreneurial mindset as well? Because I do feel like that can be a barrier. Like you said, people often come to nonprofits being very mission oriented or from a social service perspective. And sometimes I think it can be a jolt if they're put into, a nonprofit, which is trying to generate revenue, which sometimes can feel counter to the mission. So I'm just wondering about if you can address that a little bit and how you've navigated that with different organizations where there might be reluctance or reticence to be like, oh, we're making money and we're competing with people we might be trying to serve, or, just other things that might come up from time to time in that environment.
Okay, yeah, it's a great point. Good question. I wasn't going to take that on directly. I do have some mindset things that I want to talk to about, but yeah, let's make that an item of discussion as we go through this. Okay, so in business school, I was taught the lean startup model, and as a longtime nonprofit leader, where we do everything pretty lean, a lot of it resonated with me, and I've incorporated it into my consulting practice and enterprise development practices for over 10 years now. It's been a really useful tool. So, I mean, in the past, when somebody wanted to do a new business, they would often take 6 to 12 months to do research, oftentimes a lot of market research, do a whole bunch of surveys to get input from people. They'd listen to everyone thought of their business idea, get more ideas, put in all the features people said that they wanted in the surveys to get it perfect. They'd raise money to do the perfect product with all these features that everybody said were important to them. They'd spend their life savings. They'd borrow from their friends and all their rich aunts. They would write a 30, 40, 50-page business plan with all these different sections. They would put everything that they had into building the perfect products and the perfect business, living in a basement and eating ramen for months, to get this business plan and product perfect. And the, brilliant, well-researched business plan would always have a market plan, an operations plan, explaining all why this new enterprise is unique. Nobody else has ever thought of this, and everybody will want it once it hits the market. And then a number of like pages of detailed financial projections for the next 5 years, which show sales growing every year and exciting profits beginning in year three, with a curve that goes way up, kind of showing more and more profits. And then they would put this awesome business, this awesome new product out there in the market. And because they were brilliant and like all of us on the side of good and justice, um, and they had done all these surveys knowing what everybody wants, what inevitably happens with that business or product? And that is a real question. Please, people, come off mute, or put in the chat what almost always would happen with this new product or business. Any ideas? After months of planning, competition. Is that destiny? Yep. Yeah, oftentimes there is, even though you thought your thing was completely unique, there's some competition you hadn't really thought of that is occupying the mind and wallets of the customers. Unforeseen costs, sales don't meet expectations almost always. Yeah, when you design that and listen to everybody, you're trying to please too many people. Building the brand takes far more time than you thought, especially when somehow there are other brands out there in the market that you didn't really think of as competition, but somehow customers do. Yeah, all those things. Colleen, can we go to the next slide? Yeah, I mean, inevitably, no matter how much you planned and how many surveys you did and how brilliant you are, I mean, something's wrong. You get one thing wrong or something wrong. Customers never behave the way that you think that they will, especially in the beginning. Often, yep, and then you can run out of capital. As brilliant as we are, people always respond to surveys in the way that they kind of would like to think that they behave or want to behave, but not how they actually behave when spending money or their time. So there's always going to be some kind of failure, as much time and effort as you put into things. And if you did invest your entire life savings or your organization's budget and your rich auntie's money and put your house on the line, then you lose it all. You're done, and there's not really any second chances when you run out of capital, like Jennifer said. And in case of a nonprofit organization, maybe you've got invested a grant and your organization can survive, but it's intensely embarrassing. And I mean, you can blame customers for being stupid, for not appreciating healthy food or that wonderful product that you designed. But you're left without much to do at that point except go on to the next thing. But I mean, maybe your idea was really good, but you just did one thing wrong. And so if you could learn those lessons and move on to the next phase, maybe you really could make this enterprise work. And so the lean startup methodology was born to kind of take that idea that maybe we do need second chances in this. It was born in Silicon Valley, but has been adopted for all kinds of enterprises, and even social enterprises, to try and not have you blow your life savings and organizational finances while you're learning about this new product, business idea. And I think because nonprofit leaders are very accustomed to chaotic situations, trying new things, and limited resources, I think you'll find this pretty intuitive as well. So, I mean, in situations where you've had a business for a long time, you're building on something very established, there's a predictable environment, and you just need a loan or maybe some additional grant resources, then a 40-page business plan can really make sense. You've got a lot of basis to write that business plan. But if it's a new business or a risky environment, like Lord help us, like what we have going on in our country right now, then we're going to use this different set of tools called the Lean Startup Methodology and a business model canvas, quick and easy, rapid tests, knowing that you're going to mess up some things. There will be some failures, but the idea is to learn as fast and quickly and cheaply as possible, keep iterating um, until that we can actually get traction with customers, get it kind of right, and have more success. So let's go to the next slide. One of the critical principles of this lean startup approach is to try and do what's called a minimally viable product or an MVP. Instead of doing your first cut at that product with every feature that everybody told you that they want and everything that you can invest in it, and building it absolutely perfect, you do as cheaply as possible, as minimally as possible, some way of testing your idea. This is a project I worked on in New Orleans. They really felt like the community wanted and needed a retail outlet for fresh, healthy vegetables, produce, different kinds of products. It didn't exist in this particular area, this ward, lower ninth ward in New Orleans. Um, but instead of building the biggest possible market right from the beginning, investing everything, borrowing everything, they did a pop-up market on this vacant lot that they thought was the key place, a key location in the market. And this pretty cheap, crude initial version was not everything that they dreamed about, was not everything that the community had said that they wanted. But it allowed them to start testing the location. It allowed them to see what the traffic was actually like. It allowed them to start testing certain products. They could see kind of the flow of people, what things were people actually buying, what things sold and what didn't. They could start seeing about pricing. They could start testing a lot of their assumptions and ideas. Um, once they kind of got all of that information, then they could put together a much better plan, a real business plan with real data and feedback from the community that eventually evolved into what became their fresh stop market. So some things that they had in mind first, like having a big coffee shop as part of it. I mean, there were definitely ideas that they had heard that didn't make it into the final version of the fresh start market. And if we could go to the next slide. I mean, there's lots of kind of different forms of doing MVPs. Um, what you want them again to be as cheap and easy as possible, that they test a lot of your key assumptions, and that customers have to make kind of a real choice. That's not just a survey, but actually where they're actually spending money or putting in real time that begins to kind of prove that they will actually behave in the way that you hope that they're going to behave. And you want to be able to kind of be able to get quick feedback and make lots of changes as you go along. I mean that's the kind of real things that you need to have it qualify as a real MVP. Pop-up markets are great. You can do, stands at farmers markets to test location, pricing, products, prototype batches of like prepared food products, taking pre-orders, even before you've actually built out your product is something that I've seen organizations and entrepreneurs do, that will test demand. You can have, people giving you their email address and going on and actually signing up for something is actually become these days a pretty good test to see if people actually want something. A demo or a blog to kind of test all kinds of traffic. Those are the types of MVPs that people are using and can actually work. Questions, comments so far? Everybody get the idea of the MVP? Okay. Let's go to the next slide. You should have gotten this from Colleen, I think in the email. And yeah, Colleen will send out a recording of the session. And I put the a link to be able to get this and download it as well in the chat. This is kind of a DAISA modification of the a business model canvas, which is pretty readily available all online. But this is a kind of a social business model canvas. So instead of that 40, 50-page business plan, um, we would encourage you to be using this business model canvas. And it gets almost all of the critical pieces of what would go into a business plan, but in a really kind of summary, one kind of page place. And the idea is that instead of this is my plan and I'm sticking to it, that what you're trying to capture are what are your assumptions? What are the big kind of ideas that your business would success would rest on, that then you can use your MVP to validate, test, and see if they're really true. All here on one page that you can work on and share with colleagues, share with potential customers, share with funders, any kind of stakeholders that you want to get involved. It's really quick and easy to be able to share it and talk through it. And we're going to practice using this in a second. It's the lean version of a business plan that we would encourage you to use anytime you're exploring a new venture. And here's the way to kind of get started with it. And if Colleen, we could go to the next slide. I always encourage people to think first about your target customers. Who are you? And trying to think, I mean, any business that where you say it's for everybody is almost certainly not going to work. I think somebody put in the chat too, you got too many competing interests. Think about who is the low hanging fruit, who are your kind of first adopters, who are you most kind of critically trying to support, who do you most know and love too, like, and know that they want something like this. So I don't know, homebound elders or immigrant farmers or people interested who are looking for organic foods. You want to kind of think about who your first customers are in a pretty succinct characterization. Wealthy organic consumer, something like that. Ideally, you really know these people pretty well. And that's kind of where you start. And you really think this is one of the mindset things that I wanted to talk about. You're going to plan your business based on their needs, their desires, not yours. So it doesn't matter if you love kale and you want everybody to eat kale. What matters is what keeps this customer up at night. What are they really missing and needing in such a way that they would actually go out of their way, switch their patterns of behavior around and go out of their way to purchase it from you? What do they want and need? You can have your organization mission, but you're really thinking about the customer's mission and needs. And that's a big switch for so many nonprofit people that most people really struggle with. It's not about pumping out what you want. It's about what they want. Not everybody's going to be your best customer. You've got to think about SNAP users, or again, whoever you're targeting, what they want and need. Think about so the next thing you go to, and Colleen, I think if we can just hit like a next button or something okay, so seniors in public housing might be a good target customer for a particular organization. And so you're thinking about what is the problem that to be solved that they have. They want cultural foods that they're not getting right now because they don't have transportation. But you're thinking you've got to understand and know these seniors well enough so that you understand the problem from their perspective. And so so you start with the customer segment, and then you go to the problem that you're thinking that you can solve for them, and that's the next step. And then so if you don't know those people well enough to understand their problem, think of a different business. What you're thinking about isn't going to work. You've got to be able to know them. And then the next thing we would go to is, can we hit the thing again? Is what is your offering to them that solves their problem? And that could be a few different things. Maybe that's transportation and you're charging for the transportation, but maybe it's a mobile market that meets them where they're at in the public housing projects, and it goes in and sells the fresh, I don't know, cultural foods that they're looking for. I think if we hit the next button, Colleen, maybe that will come up. So mobile market. So that's the kind of order of things, follow them through. And what I would love if people are up for it is if you could go, if we could put people in small groups of, I don't know, 3 or 4, and just have everybody kind of try and mess with this a little. Think of an enterprise that you might be considering or working on, some target customers, and just follow, talk it through a little bit about the spotlight thing.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Hope that there was some really generative conversations in the breakout rooms. I think if people are using up to the end, that's usually a good sign. Hey, Leonard, nice to see you. Happy New Year.
Same. Happy New Year.
Um, Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I mean, Colleen and I were just chatting and just kind of thinking about some of the food enterprises or the various enterprises that we've seen incubator farms doing. We've remembered, I mean, people charging for tours and charging corporate volunteer groups, charging school tours actually to come on the land and find out, learn about the organization's work. We've seen organizations using their land and buildings and charging for people to hold weddings there or events. We've seen many organizations doing value-added products from some of the things that their farmers are raising. We've heard about food hubs. Actually, New Entry Farms does a big food hub with aggregation and distribution of their farmers' products, mobile markets, charging for trainings, all kinds of things. But we'd love to hear what you guys discussed in your small groups. Some of yeah, if you could just, anybody can come off mute, talk a little bit about what their organization is thinking about and how you're thinking about customers and solutions, things like that. Anybody want to start? We'll call on people too. How about Tara Duffy? Are you willing to share?
Hi.
Uh,
I am starting my second day at New Entry today. So, hi, everybody. But yeah, so the two folks in my group each had some interesting cases that they're working through. So, the gentleman that I spoke with from pyranch.org, he's thinking about land access and like wanting to help a large community of people access land, but thinking about, okay, maybe we can scale down and just help and support one person at a time as a way to sort of build up that knowledge. And so I thought that was a really nice way of thinking about it, like one person at a time, making a difference.
Great. How about Jonathan Allen?
Sure. So I've talked a little bit about an idea that I came up with like a couple days ago.
Uh-huh.
To help facilitate, I guess you maybe call it kind of peer-to-peer home garden and ecological landscape support. So finding ways
Cool.
to connect people who have the skills, initiative, physical strength to kind of start and help manage home gardens or like kind of ecological landscaping with people who want to do this stuff, want to produce food at home or have a more kind of ecologically friendly property, but don't either have the physical strength, the expertise, or the $20,000 to pay a permaculture company to do it. So figuring out like what would facilitating a network of people to do that look like what would the cost be, where could revenue come from, and how could you support people, particularly on the ones who are contributing their labor and expertise for like homeowners.
Okay. That's a really cool idea. So, okay, so your target customers are homeowners who maybe don't have the physical capacity or knowledge to build out these kind of permaculture gardens themselves.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
pretty,
so people who like they want to do this and they have property that they either own or they lease and they have favorable agreement, but they just don't have the. Oftentimes, it's either the expertise, that kind of push or whatever, and to get things going and designed,
yeah.
or particularly in the case of older people, they just don't have the physical capacity to either do what they want or to do as much as they want. Um,
Okay.
and so we have a couple of kind of things like this going on right now, and we're going to be doing a kind of pilot in one of our migrant communities. figuring and doing kind of some home gardener support this spring.
Okay.
Not exactly this, but it'll be kind of similar, and we'll be able to do some kind of exploratory work.
Wonderful. So, I mean, you're a good ways there. You've got your target customer pretty well figured out, and you seem to have kind of defined an assumption around what kinds of problems they might have, and then what your solution offering could be. This kind of service of having your farmers and gardeners be able to be a network of low cost garden design development. That's cool. And it sounds like you've even got your MVP, kind of a pilot to begin testing and learning.
Yeah, that actually came first, and then kind of built out this idea from it.
Okay, not bad. I mean, that's it. You can keep iterating and going backwards and forwards. Wonderful. Go ahead. Were you gonna say one more thing?
Yeah, I just remember the other thing we want to do this year, and it's actually kind of related, is also, I guess, to be an MVP of everybody around here has black walnut trees. There, bazillions of them. And everybody that I talk to who has them, they have no idea what to do with them. I was talking to somebody the other day whose kids like picked up a few bucketfuls and then they just sat there all year. They know what to do with them. So we're going to try and do a couple of events this fall in which we have people collect black walnuts from their property or adjacent property. And we have a single location or a couple locations where we do just kind of communal processing, and then show people, here's how you crack these things, eating,
Okay.
self-explanatory. So that would also, that's kind of a similar direction of here's how you can utilize, in this case, existing kind of food on your property, or in your neighborhood, through this kind of networked community
Okay.
expertise sharing.
Would somebody pay for the end processed?
I haven't thought about that, but I could see like maybe if you if you want somebody to crack the walnuts, and deliver them to you, that would be a pay for thing. The getting the husks off and like washing them, I wouldn't see that being it could be a donation type thing,
Okay.
but it would be
Okay.
very collective labor. We all, we've got a parking lot we can use, and we'll be running over these things with a car, and then everybody will be, washing them off together.
Okay. I mean, that sounds like a wonderful initiative and a lot of fun. I mean, I think if you were thinking about using that for revenue generation, then you have to think about again, who are the customers and what's
Yeah.
the problem that they would be willing to pay to have solved.
And in some neighborhoods, I think you actually probably could make it a $10 admission. The ones that we're mostly working in, I don't think you couldn't, but in other parts of Chattanooga, like I think that would be an option.
Okay.
That I had
Great.
not thought about, because I don't think that.
Can I call on Becca Britta Hoft? I'm sure I'm not saying your name right. There's another, okay, so can't really chat with the background noise. Do you want to put a couple things in the chat? Is there an enterprise you're working on, or should I go on to somebody else? While you're putting that in the chat, maybe I'll try Caitlin. Picked on before a little bit, but.
We discussed a couple different projects. One is an idea coming from the Hunger Coalition in Idaho that is around producing fresh pasta and selling it in a school refrigerator that they have access to, that people are already buying pre-made food from. And then this would support their food access programs. And hopefully I'm describing that right. I discussed a project that we're working on in Omaha that has, I'm appreciating sort of this idea of a lean startup, because the group that we're working with has a lot of ideas. They want a full service grocery store, they want a food hub, they're a community garden, a production garden, and just thinking about what's the way to test the market and their neighborhood market first and what product. So I was just kind of thinking through that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think for an organization that has so many ideas, the lean startup method to begin kind of testing and getting feedback from community members, yeah, it would be a great tool. Yeah. Okay. How about Keenan Hill?
Yeah, I think I actually came on here last season and talked a little bit about what we did. I with our farm incubator, we used some of our extra land that we weren't currently leasing out to farmers to produce 5 acres of pumpkins, and we sold them to our neighbors who have a pumpkin patch. It was a pretty easy partnership because we were right next door, and we exchanged some labor time from their large equipment that we didn't own for some of the revenue off the pumpkins. And so that was pretty easy for us. It wasn't the most, it wasn't the highest, profit venture we could have possibly thought of, but it was really important unrestricted funds that we now have going into this next season. What we're thinking about now is the fact that we still have that same 5 acres, but we can't do pumpkins again because we want to rotate crops. So we're thinking of new crops that we could introduce, and my ideas were definitely wanting to divide the land up into 3 different plots so that we could do rotational cropping a little easier in the future, not to completely switch crops, cash crops each year. But I'm doing some sort of ornamental corn. Patricia mentioned popcorn that we could charge a little bit more than just sweet corn for, and it could be the same market as that pumpkin patch audience. Also doing some a whole bunch of sunflowers, and that also being a kind of low input way to make some money. Our goals are definitely to make money, but also just like we don't have a ton of capacity, so finding things that we can reasonably do. And so we definitely are orienting around the customer base that is at that pumpkin patch.
Okay, good. There's a few suggestions. There's a suggestion in the chat for you as well. I mean, that also might be a great situation where you could begin to kind of think about using some of the lean startup methodology. I mean, thinking about who your customers are and a little bit more about what are what keeps them up at night? What are they missing? Do they really need garlic to, maybe there's an issue of vampires in the community and people would really pay a lot for some good garlic. Maybe a lot of families of young kids would love sunflowers. You could think about sourcing some of that stuff from other local farmers and doing a sale even in the winter before you invest the money to buy seeds and plant out your fields. And then you begin to see what sells best, even in the winter. Maybe you could do pre-orders, and that would give you a much better sense of what the demand is for these different products so that you can kind of maximize what you're doing. I mean, thinking about, how you would test pricing or think about some of the value-added products. I mean, that farming is a big investment, buying the seeds, doing all those months of labor, to then find out the customers don't really want to pay for or buy some of the products. So as much information that you can kind of begin to gather up front from some of these MVP ideas, I think will help you. Those sound really exciting, fun ideas that you're working on.
Yeah, it's been helpful to think through it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and thank you, Becca, for putting that in the chat. Also, a lot of really cool ideas. Yeah, I do really try and there's a lot out there about CSAs, and I think a lot of ways of testing what restaurants would really want and pay for. How about, okay, we're getting close to time. I would say that, I mean, one thing I love about this lean startup methodology too is I think of it as a really kind of even and taking on a little bit that mindset thing that Jennifer brought up in the beginning about doing a business. But I mean, great kind of enterprises like this are really kind of bringing something to your constituency, to community members that they want and need. I mean, one thing why I'm doing in some ways a for-profit business right now instead of a nonprofit is I really wanted that, so many nonprofits have lots of money coming in because they can impress donors and foundations, which is a little bit different thing than really satisfying needs that community members have. Ideally, hopefully it's not always contradicting, but I mean, trying to build a business where people are really putting value on what you're doing and willing to pay what they do have at a price that they can afford, because what you're giving them is something really important to them. I don't know, is in some ways a really wonderful feeling. And the lean startup methodology, instead of thinking that you're brilliant and always knowing what people want and need, or your organization is always on the side of right and justice, but you're really working with community members and testing and learning what is providing that value to them, to me feels really powerful and in some ways really humble in ways that sometimes nonprofits don't behave. Um, Putting things out in front of people and then just seeing, is it important to them? Are they willing to pay for it? Will they give valuable resources? They're, really critical money and time that is so precious to them because what you've done is just means that much to them. It seems like such an important, I don't know, that's part of the mind shift. And maybe that's called business. But I think it's about whether you're a nonprofit or a business, if you can provide value to community members that need that, um, I don't know, that's what we're all trying to do. That's what we're all about, right? Um, so thank you for this time together. Maybe if Colleen, we could put up that last slide.
Yeah,
Um,
before I do that, I just want to quickly, we have a last slide with resources, and I want to quickly drop a poll on the screen. So I'm going to launch that to get your feedback. And if folks could answer that, then we'll get to some really great resources that Daniel has curated for us. So it should be showing up on your screen, hopefully the poll, and if you wouldn't mind just taking a quick second to answer some brief questions.
I'm definitely giving it 5 stars. Very beneficial. And I'll return for all your future field webinars too. So as people are heading out, I'm very willing to give anybody feedback, bounce ideas off. I mean, I love this stuff. I love thinking about new ventures and products, and so please don't hesitate to reach out. We will send the webinar around, but hit me up if you've got questions or ideas or thoughts that you want to go through. I'm always glad to do that on a quick informal Zoom basis for half an hour at no charge. If it looks like there's a bigger project or you need more help, I'm also willing to take that on with you and talk through what that would look like. And there's a lot about this lean startup methodology online too. If you've got a smartphone, you can access a lot of these resources here. And really commend all of you for the work that you're doing. It's important and valuable, and for so many communities around the country. And yeah, really appreciate you and hope everybody, stays strong and takes care of yourself through these god awful times.
So I have these really great resources from Daniel up on the screen. And then for folks who haven't registered and might be interested, one way that we can care for each other in our network is connecting and troubleshooting problems together. And we do have tomorrow evening a connection hour. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop that information in the chat with the registration link. And we come together and facilitate a space for us to talk through any sort of challenge that might be presented, and have some people on this call have attended and maybe could speak about their experience if they want to. Let's see. I don't know if you want to give any thoughts, Caitlin, on the challenge clinic and connection hour, but it's a really valuable time, and everyone who's attended said they would return. So people really like it. If you're free tomorrow night and want to join, I dropped that link in the chat for 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern to attend.
That's great. Thank you, Colleen. Yes, the Challenge Clinic is an opportunity for in small groups, one person is able to bring sort of a challenge that they're facing. So something like this, you're interested in starting a new enterprise, or maybe you have an enterprise that needs some tweaking, and you want to bring that to the group, and they can give you feedback on it. So it's a great opportunity to kind of gain information on a challenge in real time. And we all stay connected afterwards, and it's a great place to network. So we'd love to see you there.
Great. Thank you, Daniel, so much for facilitating, sharing your method with us, and sharing your time. And thanks everyone for joining and participating. Hope to see some of y'all tomorrow night and at future field webinars. Okay. Have a good night.
Val, take care.
Thanks, Daniel. Great to see you again.
Good to see you. Be well. Take
Yeah.
care.
Bye.
Yeah.